everyone, welcome to the first AWD Educational Webinar. I'm so excited to have everyone here for our first session. My name is Hannah Ryu and I'll be moderating the discussion today. And thank you for joining us as we work together to expand opportunities for AWD Artistic Swimming. So a little bit about me. I'm a USA Artistic Swimming Youth and Junior National Team member. I'm also a certified coach and judge. And my passion lies in promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in artistic swimming. I'm also the person behind the AWD Artistic Swimming Instagram, and I am running the Artistic Swimming for All campaign to help grow awareness and opportunities for AWD Artistic Swimming globally. So here's a quick look at our agenda today. We'll have a quick welcome and introduction, and we'll hear from Coach Tina on key insights, best practices, and how to build and grow AWD programs, and then we'll have a short Q&A at the end. And it's my honor to introduce our first guest speaker, Head Coach Tina. She has been at the forefront of artistic swimming for AWD athletes, and she's been pioneering programs and advocating for inclusion at every level. Coach Tina is the head coach of Bay Area Artistic Swimming in San Francisco Bay Area, a team she co-founded with her daughter Raquel in 2015 to primarily serve athletes with disabilities. Her journey in artistic swimming began in 2009 when Raquel, who has a physical and cognitive disability, joined a small artistic swimming team. And determined to help her daughter succeed, Tina applied her previous coaching experience in swimming and roller hockey to support athletes with disabilities in artistic swimming. For the past 16 years, Coach Tina has been a dedicated advocate and leader, helping shape and evolve the integration of AWD athletes both nationally and globally. And she's currently pursuing a Master of Science in Kinesiology, focusing on sports and facilities management for athletes with impairments. One of her long-term goals is to build an inclusive aquatic facility designed specifically for athletes with disabilities. Beyond coaching, Coach Tina also works part-time as an aquatic therapy assistant in the Veterans Administration Hospital and mental health clinic in the Bay Area, and she currently holds certifications as a Level 3 artistic swimming coach and Level 2 Paralympic swim coach. And we're incredibly grateful to have Coach Tina here today to share her knowledge, insights, and vision for the future of AWD Artistic Swimming. Please join me in welcoming her.
Hello, everybody. Can people see me on the screen? Okay.
Yes.
I can't see it, so sorry about that. But I guess hello, everybody. I'm Coach Tina, and I am from California, in the northern part of California, near the San Francisco Bay Area, what we call the South Bay. And I guess one of the questions Coach Hannah asked me to discuss was our journey and some key insights. So I'd like to start out by saying that my personal experience in this sport comes from my daughter Raquel, who's been an artistic swimmer now for 16 years. I grew with her through the adversities and challenges of this sport while building equality within it, diversifying the playing field, and ultimately including qualified athletes, which I call equity, diversity, and inclusion, kind of a EDI, kind of a spinoff to the updated Canadian model of IED, just a different order of progression. My background in sports includes competitive swimming and ballet. And with combining the two, it made it an easy fit for me to join in with my daughter in understanding the nuances of artistic swimming and how to manage it with the incorporation of athletes with disabilities. Some of the lessons that I learned and some key milestones that I'd like to pass on to everybody, that number one, be patient, not to be pushy, although a lot of us, we have a different style of being pushy because we want our athletes to succeed. So I'm saying take a step back and not be pushy and allow for the process to begin allowing for your follow-up with whomever you're collaborating with. Always correct your mistakes and don't be afraid to apologize, because the journey that you're on is going to be up, down, up, down. And even though we are dealing with athletes with disabilities, not everybody agrees with us in our journey on how to incorporate in mainstream sports. Remain positive and compassionate, even if you need to agree to disagree. That's very important, because when you are discussing your goals for your athletes in your program, again, not everybody is going to agree with your outlook and your direction. So you have to have a happy medium to say, okay, well, this is the way I'm going to do it. And perhaps maybe what their way is may not be agreeable with your path. So it's okay to agree to disagree and revisit whatever it is later. Um, let's see here. Never give up because of discouragement. If you feel like you're the only one, for which you're going to find out that you're never alone in any of the challenges or this path to advocacy and getting your athletes with disabilities where they need to be. Um, you'll find other people going in the same direction with you. The people who fit in with you will come along in your journey and will be with you to its final destination. So we have to always be there to clear that path for our athletes with disabilities. Many of them are really smart. They know what to do. We empower and teach our athletes with disabilities from the beginning. As soon as they come to our team, is how to ask things for themselves, how to advocate for themselves, and how to, if they see something that's incorrect or not right, how to politely ask about it and have the courage to ask about it, especially athletes with cognitive disabilities or I call it cognitive because it does encompass intellectual and some neurodivergent, and I can talk about that later. But yeah, just remember those key things when you're beginning your journey, or if you're already in your journey, just remember those things, because those are mistakes and things that hit me really hard back in. We started this journey in 2009, but it didn't officially start until 2014. So for the last 11 years, it's been, wow, learn and trial and error and just really hard times. And now that, the groundwork has been laid, hopefully, the mistakes I make can be passed on to others so that you don't get set backwards, but you're able to move forward successfully. Some of the key highlights Coach Hannah wanted me to discuss. In 2014, that's when our journey began in Canada, when Raquel was invited to compete in the Canadian Nationals as an AWD, the first for the USA as well as globally for participation in mainstream high performance in an AWD category. So Canada was the first one to do it, and we applaud them for that effort, because back in 2014, as you can tell and see even from some of the difficulties today, back then it was something that wasn't globally accepted with a lot of countries. In 2015, we became Bay Area. It used to be called Bay Area Synchro. We're now called Bay Area Artistic Swimming. We're the first team in the USA which primarily served AWDs. There's been a lot of teams all over the United States with athletes with disabilities combined in the programs, but we were the first standalone team developed just for that purpose. We started out with just a handful of swimmers. I think we had maybe 3, 4 AWDs, and then the best thing we did was, first of all, we consulted with, which is Anna will share with you later. We have on our USA Artistic Swimming Federation page, we have a PDF file that tells you how to start a team, what you need to start a team, and how to go from there. We do need to update it to include the AWD aspect, but if you read it, you can pretty much say in your mind, this is what I wish to include for AWDs, but we will be updating that as well. But what we decided to do in the early years was to hold try-it camps and development camps. And we pretty much between 2015 and 2019, so over a 4-year period, we've included over 350 youths with cognitive and physical disabilities in our camps. And from that, we were able to monitor and select. I mean, we had a small team with a small coaching staff, so we couldn't just take everybody. So that's where we put, at that time, it's called DEI. DEI, by the way, has been around since 1965, developed here in the United States, but everything evolves. So at that time, we were looking to put everybody in the sport that had special needs, but we quickly realized that regardless of ability, ethnicity, race, sex, gender, not everybody is going to fit in a particular sport. That's just the reality of the situation. So as much as we wanted to flood our sport, our wonderful sport, with every opportunity for every potential AWD, we had to build upon the equity portion of it, where we give everybody a chance, we engage them in long-term athlete development, and there is a module with the Canadian training group that talks about that long-term athlete development for athletes with disabilities. And that is another key thing that we will be including in a future module, because it's very important that you have to make a decision. Just, I'm sure all of you as coaches, you have to make a decision at some point on who are the best athletes amongst your AWD to be able to move on to high performance. There are those athletes we have that stay as recreational. There are athletes we have that stay as local competitors. And then there's those athletes who move on to high performance. And, it's a combination of things that you have to look at for them to progress through long-term athlete development. And what we're finding is that to reach those levels, it's similar to your high performance non-AWD athletes. Oh, and by the way, we in our culture, so to speak, for in the world of athletes with disabilities, people with impairments, we refer to non-disabled as non-disabled or non-AWD. We don't call them able-bodied. We don't call them anything else. We either say athletes with disabilities by Paralympic standards, or we say non-AWD. That's how we address our non-disabled competitors or people who are not disabled, just non-disabled people or non-disabled athletes. And moving on with that, so we built our team and our program and our advocacy by running monthly camps over the weekend or over a week long. And from that, we selected athletes, potential athletes who would be a good fit for the sport. Because just because an athlete knows how to swim or they know how to do gymnastics that athlete may not be a particular fit for artistic swimming. It doesn't matter if they're AWD or non-AWD, and we all know that. We see non-AWD who's not a particular fit. So you have to apply that same standard of thinking to AWDs. So with that, competing athletes still had to compete with non-disabled athletes up until 2021 in the United States. That was difficult. It was difficult to watch because we knew that even though our AWDs had great abilities, we knew that at some point their disabilities would get in the way of training or being able to do things. And we really didn't have the accommodations down. We didn't have how can we best serve that athlete with accommodations so that they have an equal playing field. And so I'll talk about that in a little bit because it's quite interesting concept we came up with here in the United States. So from 2015 to 2020, so a good 5 years, we traveled to many countries to advocate for the development of camps, inclusion with many individuals and teams following our model to do camps, development programs, exhibitions, and competitions. And the countries such as Japan, Taiwan, Mexico, Brazil, Spain, Italy had led the way to pave path for inclusion, which then spread like wildfire to many other countries and now around 25 and growing. So, it wasn't easy. We had to find money to travel to all these countries to do all these things. So we ran a nonprofit and fundraising for that, and I think we were pretty successful. We had a lot of companies sponsorships, and that really helped because there are a lot of companies that, if you pitch it right, they are one of their key goals is to help the underserved, which includes athletes with disabilities. And then in 2020, as you know, we were devastated with the rising COVID-19. So that really set us back as far as inclusion in competitions, because at that point, there wasn't any competitions for non-disabled. Literally all went online, and that was even a struggle to do that. And so AWDs got put on the back burner. But 2020 was a pivotal moving point because we stayed in discussions with our federation. The federation kind of put us on the back burner, but we stayed right up front. And it was one of those agreed to disagree moments where we decided, hey, we're still going to be here. We disagree with putting us on the back burner because our athletes are just as much athletes as the non-disabled athletes. So you can't forget about us. So we stayed right with it. And the development for our tiers category for AWD inclusion in all mainstream competitions sanctioned by the USA then began in 2021 with inaugural invitation to the Junior Olympics in Colorado, which is the home of Team USA. So that was the most amazing competition ever because we had members of the Olympic and Paralympic committees there to watch what we do and how we do it. And even though everything was brand new and mistakes were made and everything was, kind of hectic, they saw the potential. And they pretty much gave our federation the green light to, hey, go ahead with the development of this. And so from then, our Team USA with the USA Artistic Swimming sanctioned every competition in the United States to have tier categories for some of the competitions, all local competitions, regionals, and then what they do is select. I think every other year they do Junior Olympics and then Nationals, Junior Olympics with AWD as invitational category. So that is going extremely well, and really appreciate that. And that led us into 2024. So during the past 4 years of advocating and building up AWD tiers in all USA competitions, led to other countries hosting AWD championships, from Mexico all the way to France, hosting the 2024 AWD championships during the Olympics, Paralympics, with a record number of swimmers, over 70, representing 7 nations. And outstanding job on behalf of France. With our team bringing home, we had 5 swimmers, and in solo, duet, and figures in tiers 1, 3, 4, and 5. And we brought home 8 gold medals in tiers 3, 4, and 5. Tier 3, so our tier 3 is like a advanced novices, and then tier 4 would be equivalent to intermediate. Tier 5 and 6 would be comparable to youth and juniors in high performance. So they did very well. Of course, our swimmers have a lot of experience with LTAD, long-term athlete development. And then here we are moving into 2025, continuing our advocacy. The first thing we're looking at is rebuilding our website, because we've accomplished our goals as far as establishing ourselves with our federation and moving forward. So we have different goals. Our missions are the same, but we have different goals now. And so on our website, we'll also include AWD coaches when you join our organization, which is free. It's just joining the Artistic AWD movement. You will get a passcode to log in, and you'll have access to updated information with AWD and everything else, training and so forth. We are looking at, for this year, participating in the 2025 with our regionals, nationals, and then International World Cup, tentatively planned in Mexico by the Mexican Federation. And they have a lot of experience. They've been inclusive with the annual AWD category with the Cancun Internationals. So that's something they put in, I believe, back in 2018. So they have a lot of experience with inclusion and AWDs. So we're looking forward to holding a World Cup there, because that is key to our path for our application. And with that, hopefully, I believe, and I'm sorry, but I've had pneumonia for the past month. And I was supposed to send the email to our federation with many of you here. I think Sandra, I think I see your name on there, Sandra from France. I will be sending that email out in the next 10 days. Our CEO for Team USA for Artistic Swimming is waiting for it. And that's to collaborate with Canada, France, and Mexico on pushing this forward for inclusion for Paralympic Games. And our federation needs active federations who've held competitions at national levels to be able to move this forward. And I mean sanctioned. And even though we have over 25 countries, individuals as well engaged, we actually need federations that have sanctioned and supported national competition. So that's why our Team USA is going with those handful of countries to move this forward. The next thing I'm going to move into is training techniques and best practices. Adapted training for AWD athletes and practical tips. I can say that learn about the disability of the athletes first and the deficiencies of those disabilities. I would say that maybe the first thing is getting the coaches, although there is no formal certification specifically for artistic swimming, There's numerous agencies that provide coaching certification on working with athletes with disabilities. Like I hold certification for US Paralympics at level 2, level 3, and level 4 is national team certification. And that certification is literally hands-on swimming for me as a Paralympic coach. But anybody, you can get a certification anywhere. Our organization, Artistic Swim, AWD, we are working on self-certification. So we are going to be working with the Canadian modules and kind of changing it and updating it for our purposes. To Somebody has a question, the certification costs. I'll get to that in a moment. So we're working, our certifications will probably not be that much. I know that some of the certifications throughout the United States, I'm on a group with USA Swimming. Their certifications for some of the private groups, they're really expensive. They range from anywhere from $150 to like $500. And I think that's cost prohibitive for a lot of coaches because you're already spending enough already for artistic training, swim training. So the Canadian model we're looking at, their costs are anywhere from $5 to $25 per module. And if you look at the whole series, yeah, that probably totals about $150. But when we put it together for self-certification, we're going to put it together first to see how it goes. So it'll probably be minimal cost, $5 to $10 a module, maybe in total cost for a certification, maybe $50 to $75. Then we will, with the success of that trial program that we would put forth, we would then pitch it to our federation. And if they adopt it, then they open it up globally. Many members are of Team USA's members from other countries. So if you're if you're represented by another federation, great, but you can also be a member of USA Artistic Swimming for certification benefits. I've had coaches from other countries get certified as a USA CCP coach. So that's very beneficial if your federation especially is not doing any specific certifications, even for artistic swimming. So I would say first learn about the disability. So we just got contacted yesterday by a coach from a US team. They have their first athlete with a disability and they said, what do we do? So I told them, find out what the disability is, and then sit down with the parents and the swimmer, talk about the disability, find out what it is, learn about it, and the deficiencies from the swimmer and parent, because they're going to be your best source. A lot of people say, well, we'd like to speak to a doctor. A lot of people say, we'd like to speak to a therapist. Keep in mind that the doctor and the therapist are going to only go by medical science, not best practices. I like to say we go by best practices because, as you guys know, when you meet with your doctor or you meet with your therapist and you try to say we're going to go by best practices, that might not always work in your own personal medical situation. So we go by best practices, meaning that what is best for that swimmer based on what you do for your non-disabled swimmers. Okay. And I'll have Hannah read. Sorry, I just renamed you Anna. I'll have Coach Hannah read. I know you guys have a lot of questions. Let me get through this talking points first, and we'll definitely talk about the questions and answers. So find out, even if you have to use your best friend Google to learn about that disability and the deficiencies, You can also visit a lot of the swimming websites that have swimmers, athletes with disabilities in swimming to get the basics down. Then build your training around that swimmer's abilities. Then you find out what they can do. And you'll be surprised because pretty much, I'm going to say 90% of my swimmers can do everything that a non-disabled swimmer can do. For example, I have 3 swimmers who they have physical disabilities and they use a wheelchair for assistance. And one of my high performance swimmers, so she has deficiencies with walking longer distance. But when she gets out of the chair and into the water, you cannot tell the difference at all. And some people have asked me, how does she, her legs are great. She does everything a non-disabled swimmer does. Well, that's because she has the abilities uh, uh, same as a non-disabled swimmer. Her only inconvenience and her only deficiency is walking no further than 5 or 7 feet. Well, do you have to walk in the water? No. So her abilities are pretty similar to, and I do have 2 non-disabled swimmers on my team. So we see how that all works out. So build your training around their abilities, but keep in mind what their deficiencies are because, for example, if they have cognitive deficiencies, whether it's intellectual, neurodivergent, whatever it is, under the cognitive umbrella, they may not be able to comprehend as quickly as you're speaking. I'm a fast talker when I'm coaching. I'm like this, boom, 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 boom. And I look over and I see my swimmers with cognitive disabilities looking at me like, what did you just say? So you have to remember, slow it down. If you have both of them in the pool, repeat, your non-disabled swimmers, yeah, I got it. But then you have your swimmers with cognitive disabilities looking at you, repeat what you say at a slower pace, and boom, they get it. Consult with your swimmers and parents. You do not need specific advice from doctors, therapists. And I'm not saying that to be negative. It's just at that point, you're involving too many cooks in the kitchen. Keep in mind, again, that doctors and therapists are going to go by medical science. And as we know, medical science is great, but there are things that cannot be explained, things that happen in the pool, things that happen in everyday life that medical science cannot explain. So best practices is what we go by. Do not I don't separate the training only because I don't want my AWDs to feel like they are different. They already know that. We don't need to tell them that. We don't need to show them that. We don't need to categorize them as that. They know they're different. So what I do is everybody's in the pool. And in fact, because I primarily, I have 12 swimmers. We have a capacity of 15. We had to reduce because we lost a couple of coaches to colleges. So we have 12 swimmers. So our pool is broken down into tiers. Tier 1 is over there, Tier 2 is over here, Tier 3 is over there, Tier 4. And our non-disabled swimmers, we have one in Tier 1 and we have one in Tier 4. And not that they are AWDs, but that's how they train. And if you know that the tiers, there's not any special figures or anything else like that. They're just the same groups as novice, intermediate, youth figures, junior figures. They're just selected figures from either group 1 or group 2 that are the easiest to start with training. So that's how that's grouped. If you want to separate the training, I think that's fine. Just make sure you communicate to your AWDs that the reason for that separation, so that they don't feel like they're being picked on or being, caught up in any kind of ableism where, You are just separating them because they're different. Um, everybody trains with everyone, but with special guidance for accommodations. Um, we have to keep that in mind. So when you're in the pool, there will be some accommodations that might be needed. Whether it's somebody using a pool boy or whether somebody has to have special straps or use of the chair. I don't use the chair. None of our swimmers, we never have used the chair in 20 years. Even with my daughter and her physical disabilities, we've never used that chair. That chair is good for, recreational and non-athletes, but we train our athletes to get in and out of the pool as part of pool safety. They can have assistance getting in and out of the pool, but really, they should be able to demonstrate, for the most part, getting in and out of the pool on their own with minimal assistance. I mean, getting out of the chair and then sitting them on the deck, and that's as far as we go. Everything else, they know how to get in and out. Even if, even our ones that are paralyzed or with cerebral palsy, if you have somebody that's, completely paralyzed or can't even get in the pool, they might not be a good fit for your program, but they probably are a good fit for recreational or for a weekend camp or for something. We've done plenty of camps where we invited, our disability groups like Via West and all these other places that have severely disabled swimmers, but they can still get in the pool. They just need full hands-on. And we do that so that they can experience our sport. But in reality, just like everything else, you have to select the AWDs that are going to understand pool safety, be able to uh, go through the tiers. And we've had athletes that's been in so-called tier 1 for 5 years. And basically tier 1 is your beginner novice. It's your basic novice swimmer. Nothing wrong with that. They compete in local competitions. And pretty much that's all really they want to do. They don't want to do anything further other than to stay in great shape, be able to compete in the sport, and have fun. And that's totally fine for those swimmers who cannot go beyond tier 1. Don't be disappointed if you have, as a coach or a head coach, you have a promising swimmer in tier 1, but in all likelihood that they're not going to progress past tier 1. That's okay. That you have tier 1 on your team, let them compete in tier 1. By the 5th, 6th year, they're going to be so good that they're going to have the best confidence to lead to other things in life. Our goal is to make sure that the swimmers we have, we're not trying to make them all Paralympians. That's not our goal. Our goal is to at least allow them to experience making the right decisions and using the pool and this sport as a medium to learn about themselves and how they can advocate and how they can move through their own lives with that kind of background. And I've have great success stories in the last 10 years with our athletes, 350 athletes we've run through our programs. And I've been blessed to know that they are productive people just like you and me, and that's where they need to be, and that's it. As far as training cognitive and physical AWDs together, they can train together. We have competed as duets. We have we train them together. I don't know what else to say. Some people say, "Oh, we can't separate or train together physical. It's too difficult." Here's what I found over 20 years and over the last 10 years competing, and even myself as an aquatic therapy assistant. That's why I get to pick on the therapist because I'm in water as a therapy assistant. I have to be in the pool while the therapists are on the deck. So I'm doing all the dirty work. But I train veterans who have all kinds of injuries. I've just seen it all. But we found that training with those with cognitive disabilities and physical disabilities, they learn at the same rate, really. Um, those with physical disabilities, by the time they master a movement, working through their physical disabilities and their ability to do that movement, and by the time somebody with a cognitive disability understands the movement and the transition, we've noticed right about the same time, they've got it. I mean, I have thousands of videos showing the progression. You know, if it takes 3 months to master a back tuck somersault, if it takes 3 months, at the end of that 3 months, both of them are both proficient at the same time or about the same time. So that's why we don't separate them. I don't. I mean, if you guys need to, that's totally fine because everybody's different. I'm just saying for some reason, here in my team and in the Bay Area, we have a whole wide variety of disabilities, and we put everybody in the pool, and I've never saw a problem with it. Maybe it's because we're accommodating everybody on both ends. We have coaches in the pool as well, and that seems to work and help expedite the training. Be mindful of everybody's disability and what it can interfere with. Um, and I'll show you how to use your accommodation form if you have that problem. What I mean is you're going to run into some figures that they just can't do. Like I have a swimmer with OI, osteogenesis imperfecta, and that swimmer is constantly breaking bones. I mean, we were at a competition a couple months ago, and she was waving her hand to, hey, at somebody, and she broke her forearm just like that, just by waving. And I was like, oh dear God. So um just be mindful of the figure you choose. So on our accommodation form, you can substitute, and I'm speaking for my federation, USA Artistic Swimming, and it should be the same in every country. If you have any type of disabilities act or provision within your country, there should be allowable accommodations. And with that, for example, one of the figures was doing a front Ariana, and my OI gal, no. There is no way when she gets to that Ariana, she's able to tweak her hip because she'll break her hip. She'll break her hip bone. So we substituted it for another figure of the same degree of difficulty that she could do. As long as it's the same degree of difficulty, doesn't matter. So that's what you can do on your accommodation form. If you have a swimmer, don't panic when you see the tiers. I get that all the time when people are like, oh my God, I have a swimmer, but she can't do this. She can't. What do we do? What do we do? Find the same degree of difficulty in another figure and see if they can do those. There's a whole lot that they can do. I've never ran into that problem, and I've had multiple different disabilities, cognitive and physical. Use a variety of equipment. You have all that equipment to your availability. The only thing, be careful if you're using weights. You would not want to use weights on somebody who has OI. Like I said, get to know, if they have bone deficiency or any kind of nerve issue or something like that, just be cognizant of the equipment you're using. You're pretty much able to get away with those with cognitive disabilities, but just keep in mind with Down syndrome, they do have issues with overextension of muscles, and everybody thinks that's great when they could do flat splits and all that. Careful with that, because that is not a good thing to be doing that all the time with stretches, because that's actually a condition that can worsen if you overdo it with some of the Down syndrome swimmers. The other thing with cognitive, what we found with Down syndrome, and our swimmers with autism, visual impairments. At certain depths of the water, they cannot ascertain a depth. So we've tested some of our Down syndrome swimmers, and the parents didn't even know they had the deficiency. The doctors didn't even know they had that deficiency. We knew because they kept going down to the bottom of the pool, bottom of the pool, bottom of the pool. Swimmer would come up, and we would say, "Do you know how deep that is?" And they say, "Oh, like 3, 4 feet." And we're like, "Oh, dear God, that was like 15 feet deep down there." So be real careful because there might be some things that are not known and be discovered during training. So just know that some of the cognitive swimmers may have some physical issues with their body, their muscular structure, or their eyesight. Let's see, what else? Don't be afraid. You do not have to have special experience other than compassion, patience, and understanding. It's great if you have natural fears. We all have that, especially when you're working with the unknown. We have that fear with everything. Um, Go and observe. If it's athletes with disabilities, everybody has access to a swim team that has Special Olympics or training therapy groups. Just let them know who you are, and they'll say, "Come on in." They may have you sign a waiver, and watch some of the aquatics therapy groups working with people, and you're going to see that some of the stuff they're doing, twisting and turning and all that, and you're going, "Whoa, they can actually do all that." Yes, so that should be able to help you with your observation and going hands-on with your swimmers. I highly recommend it. If you've never worked with somebody with a disability, just prep yourself a little bit or watch a video. If you don't have access to going hands-on, watch some of the videos, because that's going to empower you to go, "Oh, well, shoot, it's not that bad as I thought." Um, Even if you have to go to different sports, go to your local gym for gymnastics, and get a feel for your own fitness to coach an AWD. Not all coaches can do this. And I think what I've seen, we run a lot of junior coaches through our program. We tap off a lot of our bigger swim teams, the Santa Clara Aquamaids, Artistic Swimming, Walnut Creek Aquanuts, San Francisco. We have all those big name groups, Stanford. We have a lot of their swimmers on the junior. In fact, we just had 2 start last week. The junior senior swimmers moving on to college, they need background and volunteer hours. We're the only organization that recognizes presidential awards, which is a global, it's award given for even global work, but multiple volunteer work for an athlete trying to get into college or a job or something, and with coming and working with our team and getting in the pool. So they get that hands-on, and it's we're starting to get a lot of swimmers from other team, which is great. Um, don't think that for once that you as a coach can coach all AWDs like a non-AWD. I always hear, "Oh, just coach them the same way." That is partially true. You can coach them like that, but again, you have to keep in mind the accommodation for their disability. You have to keep in mind what their disability is. If they have brittle bones, you're not going to have them doing a lot of helicopter movement and slapping the water like crazy, because they may fracture a bone doing that. So you got to keep those kind of things in mind. They can do it, maybe not as hard or not as fast, not as quick. And those are the things you'll learn. But some of the things you could say, coach them like you coach a non-disabled athlete. Primarily, that means don't treat them any different as long as you know what their deficiencies are. But you treat everybody the same if you want to think of it in that way. Um, One size doesn't fit all. Everybody's different, just like non-disabled swimmers. You'll have to make adjustments from time to time, just like non-disabled swimmers. You have somebody that's slower than another person. Where do you put them in the formation if it's a team routine, right? Or they may not have the ability to do this with their left leg, so you put them in a different section of your team for doing whatever. Like we can do combos, and our combos are quite interesting because everybody's doing something different based on their ability. So one size does not fit all. Um, do you, and we're now moving towards mixed abilities for the first time. We have a competition next week. And for the first time, we put in mixed abilities. So we have mixed duets, as you guys all know, male, female. And I've written a proposal for mixed abilities a couple years ago. So we are now testing it in our first routines competition coming up in 2 weeks, February 8th and 9th. We introduced our first mixed ability. We have two sets of duets with two non-disabled and AWD competing together. And it's kind of funny. We were at a public pool. We use our own pool, and then we have a gym pool that we use. And people are like, "Wow, they're really good!" And "Oh, what competition is this?" And when we tell them it's mixed ability, they're like, "What's that?" And when we tell them, they were like, "Wait, a disabled? Who's disabled?" And they don't even know who. And then they pick. It's not funny, but I find it entertaining. Uh, they usually say it's our non-disabled swimmer that they think is the one with a disability, right? So that's kind of heartwarming for me because really the whole goal is for our swimmers to feel like everybody else and to look like everybody else. And I think they're superseding that. And you'll find that training them is a lot of fun, and that probably will happen where you have your AWD outperforming your non-disabled. And that's where you have a high performance swimmer that you're probably going to have to cultivate a little bit closer. Um, let's see. And even myself at times, I catch myself coaching my AWDs as if a disability is not a factor when at times it is. And I have other coaches reminding me, hey, you got to remember they have a cognitive disability, or hey, you got to remember they have a physical disability, because we get so caught up in their success of their abilities that even I forget. 20 years and longer, I was a coach for AWD roller hockey team, and I was coaching a swim team with AWDs, and I still forget because you're watching them and they're doing so well, you forget. And it's okay to forget, but not all the time. Practical tips and everything I just included, but always just remember you have a work in progress. And like research, for those of you who have masters and PhDs, like research, things can change rather quickly and time to time with updated information or a better approach to what you're doing. Um, let's see, moving on to building and expanding AWD programs. Okay, the first thing I say you need to do is consult with your federation first. Your federation may not be on board with you, but communicating with them with what you're doing is key. Because at some point, if you leave out your federation or you ignore them or you don't include them, that doesn't beg for inclusivity. Okay, let them be the bad guys. You say you email the CEO or the board of directors and you say, "Hi, my name's so and so. This is our team. This is what we're doing. We hope to one day be in line with having you work with us in incorporating and including AWDs in the programming. And we are looking at a model similar to what the United States is doing." And I think that when you make a suggestion and it's not force-fed upon your federation, I think people would be willing to accept it and work with it. I've seen people, kind of go about it the wrong way. And, people in the federation, they don't have to include, there's no law saying they have to include anybody. They want to, but, you have to have an agreeable approach with this, because I hear horror stories with federations all around the world, and it doesn't have to be that way. And we finally had a fix to a federation in one country that just closed their doors. They wanted nothing to do with AWDs. And over a period of time, we helped with a different approach, and Now the federation is a little bit more inclusive, and they're getting there. So contact your federation first. Most of them will have a page dedicating to starting your own club. It may not be for AWDs, but that's a good place to start. If you go to our USA Artistic Swim Federation page, they do have a link for under club registration and resources on how there's a PDF on how to start your own club. That applies to everything, even if you're starting a standalone AWD club or a program within a active club. There's a lot of components in there that apply, but our organization is working on, so to speak, chapters to insert in that specifically for AWD programs. So that I can honestly say it does need to be included to talk about accommodations and everything else that you need if you're going to do standalone. Standalone means your own team of AWDs. Program inclusive just means you're adding a program to an existing team for AWDs, just like novice, intermediate, AWD, all that. And then be familiar with AWD accommodations forms and when to use it. I sent Coach Hannah one of our examples of the forms. We use this form at every competition because, most of the AWDs, we actually, if not all, we start them training with goggles. And they use those goggles to compete. And I know goggles so in a lot of our competitions, they've become who cares if they wear them? We still fill out the form so that people are informed it's just not about wearing goggles, but it also is a safety factor. Some of those goggles have not prescription strength, but they have built-in what do you call it? Like reading glasses strength, whether it's 125, 150, so that they can see a little bit better and accommodate those swimmers who have depth perception issues. And with especially a lot of the visually impaired, we don't require our visually impaired to wear blackout goggles like the Paralympic does. If you look at Paralympic swimming for visually impaired, they wear blackout goggles so that everybody is equally visually impaired so that nobody sees nothing. We do use those training goggles during our training so that they can get an idea of confidence and where they're at in the pool versus relying on how far am I from the wall, how far am I from the bottom of the pool. It is great training, but you really have to know how to use those blackout goggles. But I can tell you, once you know how to use them and you apply them to some of your swimmers that have certain fears and work with them, it's an excellent tool. Personally, I don't like wearing them. I think it's kind of scary, but I have some swimmers who love them. And some of our tier one with autism, they're just like constantly going through my bag. I want to wear the blackout goggles. I want to wear because they're so confident and, oh, look what I can do. And I don't have to see where I'm at, right? I just know where I'm at because, we have our built-in receptors of where your body is at in the pool. And if you train those receptors appropriately, yeah, you really, it's kind of like walking to your car. You just automatically walk to your car. So those are a very good tool. And you can get those, well, they used to be on Amazon. And I think there's another link. If you really need those or you'd like to try them, I could try to find the link that I used. But they're just regular goggles, but they're jet black. And I know that when we started a visually impaired team in Taiwan, I think she ordered a whole bunch. She's got like 20 visually impaired swimmers, and they've used those goggles so that everybody is just, they can't see anything and they know where they're at, pretty much to reset their internal receptors of space and time. Overcoming challenges and available resources. The overcoming challenges, you're going to get them. You're going to get people, and when I say challenges, I think it's more in line with ableism. And if you don't know, that's a whole different subject. But if you don't know what ableism is, all you do, just Google it, and AI will just give you a brief description of what it is, and it'll set you in the direction of going, okay, I can work around that. Ableism is basically a stereotype of people for people with impairments. Know what your available resources are. Um, Contact a disability advocate. If you are not sure of ADA and your state's disability laws vary from state to state, country to country. Nobody says you have to become an expert in that, but you can contact your local state office and find out who are the disability advocates and work with them on, you know, by law, what do I have to provide? By, what do I have to do? And all these things. Or you can contact me. I'm very well versed on federal and state laws with that. ADA is pretty much federal standards, and then each state has their own guidelines for disability laws. Sometime you might find that ADA laws doesn't cover everything that you wish to do with your club or training, or that an institution that you're dealing with in a competition or training or your federation, they may seem like they're breaking laws, but they're not. It's pretty much ableism that's on the forefront, not a breaking of the law. You'll be surprised that a lot of things that are happening is not against the law. Uh, Pretty much you just have to think with accommodations. If you're going to, for example, if you're going to go to a competition, accommodations. And if they can provide it without undue hardship on that organization putting on the competition. For example, if there's an old swimming pool and the deck is not wide enough, and you say, well, I need to be able to have it widened so I can have my wheelchair users, use it. Well, if that means they have to tear out the deck and, put in new construction, that's undue hardship. They're not obligated to do that. At that point, then they're going to tell you to use the disability chair to lower your swimmer in the pool who's on one end to get to the other end of the pool because they can't use a wheelchair to access the deep end. So there's things like that. There's also, we've gone to competition where there's a deck that's raised, 6-7 feet above the water, and you have trained your swimmers to dive in, for their routine at zero entry or maybe a foot off the deck. And then you go to a nationals and you get this deck that's 6-7 feet up off, and you're going, oh my God, okay, well, we're not going to be able to do that. How do we start? Well, they can do a sit dive, or they can jump in the pool and swim to the center. I mean, that's the best you can do, because when you ask, if you say, okay, well, I need to have that deck lowered, that might be cost prohibitive. They don't have to do that as an accommodation if it's cost prohibitive. So those are some of the things that might be shocking to you, and they say no. You cannot call the ADA and say, well, I need to have this done, because if it's not a permanent issue, nobody's going to help you with it. I mean, if it's a pool that, it could be a permanent issue, then they may have to, undergo some constructions. They may have to tear out those steps and put in a ramp. So that's different than something that's a temporary issue. Let's see here. We will be, our organization, Artistic Swim, AWD. We are a global organization, so we do invite people to become reps for their country. And I know we've taken a lot of, applications. Our application's like a half page. It's like basically we have to fulfill that for our nonprofit status, like who are all these people? Your name, address, who you are, and what country you're from. But basically, it's not that you're a member of Artistic Swim AWD. You're just a global rep for your country. So we give you a T-shirt that might say Artistic Swim. We haven't printed them yet, but if you're in France or Mexico, we give you a shirt that says Artistic Swim AWD, and on the top we'll say Mexico or France or Italy or whatever. Basically, we're all under one umbrella when we're pushing for high performance sports like in Parapan Games, Paralympics, disabled games, any of the military high performance games. We're one group. We're not, oh, well, Italy over there and Mexico over there and all these AWD groups. No, Artistic Swim AWD globally is who we are, and we represent, the French Federation, or we represent, blah, blah, blah. So we're moving to that direction. We're also moving, like I said, when we get our website is up, but you'll see some pages says under construction. If you type in artisticswimawd.org, it is up and running, but you'll just see that it's, there's only certain pages that are up and other ones are being developed. And like I said, we're going to have a login access for coaches. Doesn't matter where you're from, but you'll log in and then you'll have access to accommodation forms. You can change to put your federation logo on it or your team logo. You'll see that Hannah has our accommodation form. I did black out the names of some of our swimmers because I'm using it as a sample, but technically once they enter a competition, that's public information. And so, in our waiver for our team, they have to understand that, once they compete, they're not really protected. The nature of their disability is, unless they're personally asked, but, they're not really protected. They say, oh, that's an AWD. Well, everybody's going to know around the world you're an AWD, but what exactly you have medically, no, nobody's privy to it unless you personally release that. But in this training, in this accommodation form, you will see that Hannah, can you bring that up, the form, so I can show them like accommodations? Because really, I think that's the most important understanding. And I think that's what everybody is afraid of is, what's the biggest issues with AWDs? Really, there's nothing, but you have to understand how accommodations work. And so I fill out this form for every meet. I just had a meet deadline last week. I turned in the form. This one was from our figures meet in December because some of our routines meet, that form is like really complicated because we're doing a lot of substitutions. So, I don't want to give you a form where it looks confusing. So the figures meet from December is kind of an easy one because all we're doing is substituting figures, but I'm going to show you, you can see the form and how I did it. Now the blacked out part is just the swimmer's name. It just goes by last name when you're doing these forms. And it'll say tier 1, swimmer Jones or whatever. But what I want you to understand of accommodations is when you see this form, she's bringing up, when you see this form, then you go, oh, okay. So there it is. We put that's our USA form. It is online, but without the logo. I don't know why I have to get them to put the logo on it, but I put the logo on it. But everything else is the same. So you'll see how it's set up, what meet you're going to, what club you are, who's the head coach, and your email address. And then the 3 questions that ask, I'm on my cell phone, here we go. General facility, with respects to the deck, locker room, and space. I put just clear wheelchair access to each figure station, and I put how many swimmers, so they're expecting, so that they know they're gonna see 2 wheelchairs or 8 wheelchairs or 8 walkers if they're using a walker. I think in France we had one of our swimmers, she was using crutches. So you just want to put that down so they know what to expect. Number 2, specific accommodations for figures. You'll see here, what tier they're in, the category, and their last name. And for example, we had, oh, I didn't black it out. Okay, well, whatever, it's public information. Replace the Barracuda bent knee with Neptunus. So they're the same degree of difficulty, 1.7, not a problem. With tier 4, that's the one we replaced the front Ariana with the Albatross, 2.2. They're the same, so it doesn't matter. And then when it gets to specific routine accommodations, that's when you put down they need to wear goggles, they need to wear a swim cap. I remember I had a swimmer who had allergies to chlorine. And yes, there are some pools that are saltwater generated chlorine where you don't have to worry about that, but we're not going to guess which pool has it. I mean, we can research it ahead of time, but when we're so busy, we just allow them to wear a swim cap if that's the case. We put it down. Goggles, if they need help getting in and out of the pool. The other thing our federation permits is land drilling on the side of the deck. We had a Down syndrome swimmer who had autism. Oh, that's a challenge. She was an excellent swimmer, but the disability got in the way when she was trying to understand a direction and try to remember it, and then you could see it kicking in. So we would have a swim or a coach on the deck going parallel alongside, and she was land drilling. So that swimmer, and we taught her how to look in our direction without being so obvious. Like if she's, in a front layout, she'll have her head turned, and that next movement she's supposed to do, the coach is already doing it. So then if she's in a front layout and she forgets that she needs to go into a front pike to do a tower, that coach is already doing that pike to a tower, then she does it. So it moves very quickly. So that coach needs to be up on it, and they really need to know what the routine is. If it's a tier 1, the tier 1 routines are 1 minute. 1 minute and 5 seconds is the allowance, 5 seconds. So it's typically 1 minute or less. So it's a very short routine. So it's very helpful that you have a coach on deck in case that swimmer needs it. If you know the swimmer doesn't need it, then you tell the swimmer ahead of time there's not going to be anybody on deck. I have one swimmer for this competition coming up. At the last minute, she says, I'd feel better if somebody was on deck. And I said, that's fine. So we'll have a coach on deck and paralleling her routine. And the tier 1s is only 1 lap. So you really can't mess that up. I've had coaches even forget, so it's kind of embarrassing, and the swimmer remembers, right? But other than that, we're looking forward to developing the how to start a club and adding the AWD components. We're looking forward to adding training, self-certification. So if you do a training module on our website for Artistic Swim AWD, you'll be given a certificate saying that you've taken the AWD Artistic Swim AWD self-certification and that you're certified to coach tiers. And tiers just means the different, like I said, level. You have tier 1 through 6. 6 would be pretty much the high end of youth, which used to be called 13, 15 youth, and some junior elements in there in tech. So by the time a swimmer reaches tier 6, they should be capable of doing a tech routine as well as a juniors, youth and junior figures with the same elements. And again, we match up, again, just to close this out. Tier 1 would be your novice beginners. Tier 2 is, I call novice intermediate, kind of after a couple of years. Tier 3 is more of an advanced novice going into intermediates, kind of that transition. Tier 4 is definitely intermediates. And then tier 5 is comparable to beginner 13, 15 or youth. And then again, tier 6, as I mentioned, high-end, high performance of youth and juniors. There is no senior level because if they can reach the senior level, then they should not be an AWD, honestly. Because when you look at Olympics, you look at, okay, it takes on average, well, maybe six to 8 years to train somebody at an Olympic level who are going to get scores in the 7 to 10. And then when you look at Paralympic training, you're looking at, 5. I think our tier 6, she's going into her 5th year with artistic swimming. So 5 to 8 years for a tier 6, because then in Paralympics, I mean, the expectation would be, you're looking at scores anywhere from 6s, and you can kind of match up. It's kind of consistent when we go to competitions. The tier that they're in is pretty much matches the scores. So if they're in tier 6, they're typically getting 6s, right? So you're looking at, mid 5s to 7s in tier 6. If they're getting 8, if somebody hits an 8, either the judge was sortedly wrong, or if they're consistently getting 8s, they're not AWD. I don't know what they are, but if they are, then they're exceptional. But they probably are not going to make it to the Paralympics, because when it gets to classification, and just real quick to close this up, that's a whole different conversation. And we do have somebody from Finland in the classification program, so great. She's an AWD coach. She's a orthopedic surgeon, so she's wonderful. However, when it comes time for that classification and people get disappointed, they're only going to classify you on your deficiency, not on your ability. So keep that in mind. It's you will get, like, my daughter, she's nationally classified for Paralympics. So she's classified in her on her what her disability is, like what she cannot do. So it's kind of a different way of thinking, but when it all comes together, you'll understand it. How we're going to get over the cognitive hurdle is going to be pretty challenging, because, as you know, Paralympics uses a different organization for classification for cognitive. So they have to have a certain IQ, they have to meet a certain this, and that. But that's going to have to change when it comes to artistic swimming, because of the nature of our sport and the challenges of our sport goes beyond high performance swimming. It's a much higher level. So you're going to have to expect a much higher level of athlete in the cognitive realm. So, thankfully, we have somebody from Finland who understands the whole AWD movement and advocacy, and familiar with how to make those challenges, how to meet those challenges. So here we are. And I think I've covered most of the basic stuff. I'll turn that back over to Hannah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Coach Tina, for sharing your valuable insights and experiences with us today. While Coach Tina has been talking, I've also been sending some links in the chat for resources that Coach Tina mentioned. And now we'd love to open up the floor for questions. If you have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat or unmute yourself.
I know there was a few questions that I couldn't get to.
Yeah,
Any questions?
The only question in the chat was about the certification costs, which you already covered. So I think if there's no questions, then
there was another question somebody had. Can you look further in the chat? I'm not too sure who it's from. There was.
maybe they private messaged you the question.
I
can't see it on the general group chat.
Let me see. No, I think, it was just somebody making a comment about the mixed ability. No, I think that's it. I just think that everybody will have questions as they go along. But I think if you use the resource guides and everything that's available here, I think you'll find it fairly smooth.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just last thing before we wrap up, I want to share that our next webinar will be on February 28th at 8 a.m. PST, and I'll be sending out the registration and meeting links soon, so stay tuned for those. And thank you so much for joining today, and a special thank you again to Coach Tina for sharing her experiences with us, and I hope to see everyone again next month. If there are any specific topics you'd like to see covered in future webinars, or if you'd like to share your own story in an upcoming session, please reach out to me and I will drop my email in the chat. Thank you everyone for coming.